So I'm willing to bet most of you guys that are watching the channel have seen this new rig called the hover rig. It's kind of been a bait that's taken over the industry a little bit as far as the hype built around it, but today what I want to talk about is when you need to throw this bait and when you need to throw this bait out, because there's times when you need to throw it and there's times that there's other baits that we'll talk about that will take its place and do a whole lot better job. So stick around, you're not going to want to miss this video. So it wouldn't be fair to start telling you where and where not to throw a hover rig without first actually telling you what a hover rig actually is. And so I have one sitting right here. What a hover rig is it's actually a fluke style minnow bait. I have a Z-Man scented jerk shads right here. And it's basically designed with one specific style hook. Core Tackle, C-O-R-E, I'll have it linked down below, makes these specific jig hooks that have the lead built onto the body of the jig, and then the lead actually protrudes from the head of the jig, creating an elongated nose. And so what it does is you insert that into one of these fluke style baits. Pick your favorite bait. I just like the jerk shads because they're basically indestructible, but that also kind of makes it tough to rig them on here, right? So you take and insert it into the soft plastic minnow at a certain point, and what it does is it creates a minnow bait. What it does is it creates a bait that kind of hovers over top of the cover, exactly like the name sounds, because now instead of it being nose weighted and when you stop it, it kind of sits like this or it sits like this. Now when you stop it, it sits perfectly horizontal to where those fish really can't resist it when you're hovering it over top of them. And that's the cool design of it, is it's not nose weighted, it's not tail weighted, it's weighted right in the middle, and so it really gets that bait to have a very neutral buoyancy, and you can just sit there and shake it over top of those fish, and it does a great job. Almost similar to like what a drop shot would do, where you could sit there and shake it in one spot. You can do very similar things with the hover rig. So now that you know what a hover rig is, let's talk about what the advantage of a hover rig is. It's kind of like what I alluded to, that you can really hold it over top of those fish. When you're fishing it, you can literally just cast it out. I'll show you while I'm fishing it. You can literally just cast it out if you're fishing over top of cover, brush piles, stumps, and by shaking your rod tip, just casually shaking it, that bait just sits there and hops and hops and hops, and it really just tempts those fish over and over and over again. And so as you're shaking it, it allows you to move the bait vertically without actually moving it horizontally a whole lot. And it really gives those fish time to come up and eat it for those fish that are being really stubborn, which we've all seen. If you've fished brush piles before, we've all had it where you make a cast out there and your bait just feels like it's coming back to you too fast for those fish to actually grab it. You're like, oh, if I just had a couple more seconds, or if I could hold that bait there for just a little bit longer, I feel like those fish would get it. So let's talk about where I like to throw a hover rig and the situations that I really enjoy it and think it's actually advantageous for you to have it on deck. And that's going to be when fish are around cover in less than 20 feet of water. And the reason I say that is because for this bait to really make sense, you have to give it time for it to get over those fish, and there has to be a reason. And so most oftentimes the most pressured fish are the ones that are around cover. Those are the fish that have seen people over and over and over again. And so that's what we have today. I'm sitting out here and there's a brush pile right out here in about 25 feet of water. And that's what I like to look for, is these brush piles where these fish have been targeted with all kinds of moving baits. And so now what I want to do is I want to go back through with something that takes more time to get down to them, but something that I can hold over top of those fish's heads, right? It's kind of like the people that throw jigs on docks, chatterbaits on docks, and then somebody comes behind them throwing a wacky rig. A lot of times it catches fish. This is your wacky rig for those situations. If you're fishing in 10 feet of water and there's a stump, you know, and all of a sudden you can see that there's a fish on it, that's when I like to throw this bait, especially in pressured areas, because it makes sense and you can really just hold it over top of those fish's heads. And again, I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to do light rod shakes, because that's what really makes this bait have its bread and butter. So the other thing you need to know with a hover rig is there's 3 different sizes. There's a 16th, there's a 3/32, and there's an 1/8, all made by Core Tackle, and you have to rig each one extremely differently from the last. Because of how they sit in the body, you have to change the position of each of the sizes in the size of the bait that you're throwing. And the reason is because the bigger ones, the bigger sized weights, the weight is more heavily distributed toward the head of the bait. So the heavier the bait gets, the more weight is distributed down the shank of the hook, and so you honestly can position it closer to the nose of the bait. So the heavier the hook, the more you can go toward the nose of the bait. The lighter the hook, the more you have to go toward the middle of the bait, because that weight is so heavily distributed toward the front. Because there's so little weight, it's all on the nose. And so if you want that bait to be perfectly balanced, you have to bring that hook back into almost the middle of the bait to get it to be perfectly weighted. And that's going to be key when you're throwing this bait. To keep it perfectly balanced, you just have to change how you position it. So I will have the gear that I like to throw this bait with linked down below, and those are affiliate links. So if you guys want to get any of the gear for this, please use those links, because that is directly linked to me, and I will get a discount or a profit from those links that you guys use. So that would be super, super appreciated. And like I said, this bait works great in 15 to 20 feet and less around cover. And so one other bait that works extremely well in that circumstance is going to be a Nico rig. And I will have a video linked up here where I break down everything you need to know about fishing a Nico rig in similar situations. So thank you guys so much for watching. God bless, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.